Hey, it's Victoria.
It's Clay.
And it's Merlin. He didn't really want to be on camera today. But whatever, he came down here, so now he is. And today we're going to be covering Volume 1 of Scott Pilgrim.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so Scott Pilgrim Volume 1 comprises of the first and second of the books, and there's a total of 6. This is the colored version, so obviously there's colored pictures.
Oh yeah.
And this is by Brian Lee O'Malley.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never read this before. This is Clay's book and told me to read it, and I was a little hesitant, I will be honest.
Why were you hesitant?
Because I didn't love the movie.
What?
I know.
It's such a cultural sin of like nerddom.
Okay, but I have reasons, and we'll go over that.
Yeah.
So have not finished reading the rest of them, but plan to do so, and we'll talk about this. And then at the same time, I'd like to, once the show comes out, we can talk about those episodes and how that compares to the books and how it compares to the movie. So,
And also the game. Get ready for that coming out.
yes, we do have the game. There is a photo of us playing against the first Evil X on our Instagram. So if you follow us on there, you probably saw that.
Oh, yeah.
We do have the miniature game, and I did pick up the expansion for Clay.
Yes.
Yes, Merlin.
Yes.
So I did want to start out. I really liked this a lot.
Yep.
I did. This is non-spoiler territory still. Like I said, there's 6 books, so I'm assuming you're going through pretty much all the Evil X's for one per book. And because it is longer than the movie, there is more backstory to everybody.
Yeah. Keep going back to backstory.
Okay, about the backstory. And I really like the art style in this as well too. It was a lot of fun. And the coloring, is really cool too. I love how I open it up and it's to the bedroom scene. Okay. Apparently that's where this book falls to, Clay.
Oh yeah.
But it's fun. I do like the art style a lot, and I think they're really pulling from the books when it comes to the show.
Mm-hmm. Very stylized.
Yes.
Very in Scott's bubble. You are invited into what Scott is experiencing, what he thinks is important going on in his life, and what his thought process is. So he's kind of a unique protagonist for me. He's very much in his own head a lot and thinks he's the main character.
He really does.
Of everybody's lives.
Yeah, he has definitely that main character energy.
He usually doesn't ask people what they have going on unless it's the band
No.
that concerns him in some capacity.
Really, he doesn't ask unless he needs them to do something for him. He's incredibly selfish.
Oh yeah.
So I don't love him as a character. Not that you have to love the main character of a story. I don't think you do.
Yep.
And I do find him compelling enough that I obviously want to read the others, not just because Clay's trying to make me. But he did have to convince me a lot to read this. And once I did, I was like, all right, I get the appeal.
There's differences between the book and the movie. If you've only seen the movie, you get a very sped up version of what's going on. And granted, it's 6 books. So Edgar Allan Poe, Edgar Wright, he actually...
this would be so much different if Edgar Allan Poe did it.
Edgar Wright, I think, did a fantastic job of combining all of those super stylized hyper moments in one action movie that could sell Michael Cera as an action hero. But I think what it has to take away from almost like a necessary evil is some of those more character-driven moments, some of those more human elements to the book and all the characters.
Yes. And I think my biggest complaint to you about the movie was that I did not see the appeal for Ramona and vice versa for Scott. And I didn't get why the two of them would even like each other or want to be together. And that was not an actor choice. I think it was probably script, and the amount of time that they had was limited because there are a ton of characters in this.
Yeah, and she's in the movie and in the book, she's also using his head space as a subspace highway, a point of getting from A to B in microseconds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just starting to fill his head, and he's like, oh, that's that manic pixie dream girl obsession that a lot of guys of that age have.
Yeah.
Where he knows that she's really cool, and she's got this kind of reputation around her. And not everybody's really slinging the same stuff. They're usually rumoring or, gossiping. Rumoring's not a word.
No, it's not.
But gossiping around
is a word.
Ramona, because she does have a history of interesting exes, and she's gone from New York to Ontario, Canada, and has kind of built up a reputation. They don't know if she's like a fighter. They don't know if she's just going to ruin your life. A lot of things about her that Scott is obsessed with finding out the truth.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Okay, so before we say anything else, I want to give spoiler warning for both the movie and the book, because I'm sure we're going to continue to throw in some of the movie stuff as well.
You kind of have to. There's a comparison to be had.
Yeah. Okay.
You said it at the very beginning. It's like, I didn't like the movie, but I like this. So.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so it starts out very similar to the actual movie with our introduction to Scott. It is kind of fun. He has little blurbs when you meet a new character. For each of the books, they started out that way. So I could tell instantly where the second book started within this volume.
Yeah.
Because they re-show that. And they'll say, like, name, age, rating. And Scott's is just awesome.
Yeah. It's a very big nod to video games, how they would tell you about that character without any dialogue.
Yes, a little stat block, which is cool. I think it's fun to see his perspective of those people, because then while you're reading it, you actually get just like the outside perspective then. It's not strictly from Scott's point of view. I mean, they're alluding to him having a bad breakup before, and that's why he's now with Knives. I do feel, I was like, I could just see that relationship not going well, because he's 23 and she's 17 and still in high school, and the conversations that she's having is so like high school gossipy, like, oh my god, so-and-so is going out with so-and-so, but so-and-so likes them, so it's just this whole big drama, and now they're not even speaking, and he's like, yeah, and he's into it all at first. He's talking to her, and I can kind of get it, where he doesn't want to be an adult. He's made that very clear.
Yeah,
doesn't want to be an adult.
Okay.
And like when they show the room and who owns what, everything is owned by Wallace.
Gotta say, that's such a clever way for the movie to do that whole thing. It's like a sound of like a copier or some sort of sound effect where it's like doop doop boom doop, and because it's Scott's stuff is like not as cool as Wallace's.
No, and really, he's even wearing a lot of clothes that are Wallace's.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why is Wallace friends with them? Like, why would he put up with that? I don't think he's paying rent. I'd be like, get out. And I don't understand that, but whatever.
They are friends. They have that history together.
Okay.
So when Scott's dating Knives, why do you think Scott loves the idea of that relationship?
Because she's young and looks up to him. And he probably, I don't know for certain, but it does seem like his other relationships weren't all like, oh, Scott, you're so great, and I just love being with you. Whereas Knives is, because she's young, and she's in high school, and it's this older boy, and it's super cool. He
gets to act cool. He gets to be that cool person.
Yes.
He's got a lot of insecurity. Because you start to suspect that it's the other way around with whoever he dates.
Yes, I think he's usually very insecure with them.
Yeah.
And he is with Ramona. But with Knives, he gets to be the cool guy.
Yeah.
And 5 years is not a big difference, which, as Knives points out, but at the same time, she's 17. I have no idea what the age of consent is in Toronto.
Right.
But, I mean, they don't do anything besides they, like, held hands once, and then she does start kissing him. a few times she'll just like go in for a big old kiss.
Yeah, usually they don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read the book since 2013, 2014, because that's when the movie came out, that's when I read it after the movie came out. The movie came out in 2010. Okay. I read all of them. After the movie came out, a few years later, I read them again.
Okay.
So it's been a while since I've actually read the books, but the way I remember it is that she kisses him at the most weird times in his life where he's trying to have an introspective thought.
Yes.
And she goes for the kiss, misconstruing what he's actually interpreting.
Yes.
So the concert, and we'll get to the rocket, but the concert being one of the biggest things for him.
Yes.
Realization of like, what do I actually want? So.
And I don't know if it's her suspecting that, and it's like, ooh, I need to like give him something so he doesn't start thinking that maybe we shouldn't be dating. But she's always finding reasons why they should be, and I get it. Again, she's young, and I really feel bad for her. Yeah. Particularly once we move on. So he does have Ramona start coming through his head, and then he ends up meeting her at the party, and they do have a bit better conversation, I think, than they do in the movie. Yeah. Because they do talk longer. Again, timing, I get it. But I was like, all right, I kind of see the appeal there, what they're thinking. Yeah. And then he places the order for the CDs so she can hopefully be the delivery person to his place. Right.
He has to pick out some of the best CDs, or in the movie's case, DVDs that will impress her. Because he's hoping that maybe if she looks at what he ordered, that it'll make him look a little bit cooler to kind of go along with that theme. And weirdly, they don't say it in the movie, but the DVDs that he ordered from Amazon.ca was, I think one of them was a copy of Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's a great movie.
And that's the thing that he throws over his shoulder, so.
Yeah, that is a great movie.
Yeah. But everything in that, like, those tight corners from, like, the party that he goes to, the setup that they have in their house, the rocket, everything translates super well onto screen. Like, the amount of detail that they were able to put from frame by frame, like, I imagine they just have big sheets of the comic book just held up while they're describing all the scenes and how to shoot them.
And the costuming is very well done. Yeah. It looks very similar to what the book is. So yes, I do agree on that.
And then introducing some of the other characters before we get to some of the actual conversations with him and Ramona on their first date. What do you think of his band, Sex Bob-omb?
So Kim, I do have a bit more backstory with her. Like, I see that they met in school when they were younger, and Scott saw her. He was with Lisa, who we never saw in the movie. But we do meet her. And
very important character for the series.
Yes, and they did meet in school. Scott's first day, he gets like harassed by some guys, and he goes in for a fight, and Lisa and Scott meet outside of the principal's office and start talking. Well, Lisa's like, we should start a band. And I thought from the background that Lisa was interested in him. But then when he sees Kim playing in the school band, like she's playing drums, and he's like, oh my God, it's a girl that plays drums. We should totally get her in the band. And then he's like, yeah, I think I like Kim. Oh, yeah. And Lisa's like, you like her? And it does seem like Scott just jumps around from girl to girl. It's like the new shiny thing. Is how it comes across, at least up to this point. Right. So they dated for a while. I don't really know at this time why they broke up, but they did. But I do like Kim, and I would like to see more of her. And she is, girl, she is too young to be jaded already. Like, the world only gets more difficult and just more awful.
Kim gets to have a really fun relationship with Scott going forward, because you'll get to see way more backstory going into the next couple of books with Kim. But she gets to have that fun relationship, as in calling Scott out on all of his bullshit.
Good.
Just like she does in the movie, she has almost like word for word is in the comic.
Okay.
It's like, if your life had a face, I would punch it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I can see that, definitely.
It's like, are you just like really happy, or are you just really evil? Like, those lines really stick out.
Oh, I think he is evil.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to name his D&D alignment starting out, where would you place it?
Chaotic evil.
Good.
Yeah, I don't think he gives a shit about anyone else, really.
I think chaotic selfish is a really good way to describe him.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think that's why I would consider it evil, because he is going to put himself first.
Yes.
Every time. And I think you even made the comment yesterday, or someday, I don't know. Mm-hmm. We live together. We talk. We have
conversations before the book, before we start rolling.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that like Scott could actually be a fairly good guitar player if he put in the work, but he doesn't. And again, he's being somewhat selfish because the band relies on every member to put forth their full effort, and he's just not going to.
Yeah, he knows his band isn't the best. It's a garage band. They play very loud to kind of make up for the fact that they don't always get in as much practice as they should.
Yes.
It's like, play louder, then people will think you're more confident. Mm-hmm. And that's also one of the things I love about the movie, because I freaking love the music in the movie. Mm-hmm. Beck is the person who writes all the music for Sex Bomb, whereas Metric writes all the music for Clash of Demon Head. We won't get to them, but very excited for you to read book number 3, sorry, and number 4. She's actually a way more important character in the book than in the movie. But he's just a slacker, and he's going to put off a lot of things in his life, even the things that he probably likes to do. He loves playing bass, but he doesn't practice at home. He doesn't do all those things.
And I don't really understand how it is that he spends his days. I mean, he does sleep really, really late. Yep. But he doesn't have a job.
Right.
And so what are you doing? Like, I don't understand.
I think that gives it a really good starting point as a protagonist. What makes a really good protagonist for me is that they are complicated. Or they're in, for characters like him, I think, like, obviously Steve Rogers as Captain America starts off like in a really good place, and it's the world that's changing around him that makes him interesting, and how he makes his decisions based on his own principles. But for Scott, I love the fact that he's probably a chaotic evil kind of character.
Yes.
And he's got a lot to learn in the books ahead. But the reason to keep on reading is that you want him to improve. You want him to be better. But you need to have good qualities in him as well to be rooting for him. So what do you think his best qualities are starting out? That face. Oh my goodness.
I don't know that there is any.
By this point in the conversation, we probably haven't listed any so far. So as we talk more about what goes on in the comic, why don't you look for those?
I will.
Okay.
Meeting Ramona, and then he hangs out with her.
He does get a date. Like a good hangout session.
And he's technically still in a relationship with Knives. And he invites her to come to the show that his band's actually playing at. They're going to be... I forget what it's called, but they're playing.
Yeah, the Rocket?
Yeah, thank you. The Rocket. So they're going to be playing there, and he invites her, and it's like he doesn't remember, but he already asked Knives to come. So
Ramona and him actually escape the cold through Subspace Highway, right?
Yes.
They go back to her place.
Yes.
And they have a conversation that I think is pretty important going forward. If you remember that.
Of course I do. It's where she lists off all the T's.
All the T's. That's the important part. This girl is perfect. Every guy wants Ramona Flowers because she's got a lot of T's and she's got interesting hair.
I have a lot of T's. I don't have interesting hair.
No, she is a very, very interesting character. And she comes across as way more warm than her on-screen version.
Yeah, I did not like her on-screen version. I was like, I don't get the appeal here. You went down. Okay.
She's more relatable. She's got a lot of baggage to her, and it's going to take some time to let other people in.
Well, there's a few times now that I've seen it where like Scott will be talking to her and she'll like zone off and you'll see her just kind of stare off into the space and there's like little lines around her head. And he asked about Gideon and she was like, what? Who's Gideon? And Scott's just kind of like, okay. And I'm like, no, there's something going on there. Like, you need to figure this out. There's something not right here. So clearly she's being somewhat like controlled in a way is what it looks like. But Scott being Scott is not really paying attention to that. But yes, back to the tea time.
Yeah.
And he follows her into her room. Creeper move, don't do that. And she's changing. And then they end up doing the whole, well, wouldn't it be warmer if we got into bed next to each other? And so they get into bed, and then Ramona stops and she's like, I don't want to have sex with you right now. And I did think that was pretty cool that, and Scott really didn't pressure her. He was like, I mean, yeah, if you say you want to, I'm definitely going to, but we can totally just snuggle in the bed together. And so he spends the night with her.
Why ruin a good thing? It's like, if you're experiencing so much good, like, I think people naturally want to take it another step and just instead of like just enjoying all those like little moments that lead up to something like sex.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, funny you should say that.
What? Don't leave that in. Don't leave that in. Oh my God. That's completely different. She's actually living there and I wasn't living. Oh my God, I'd cut this all out. I swear. I'm done.
Done.
Here's my microphone. I'm done.
Okay, so yeah.
Why are you with me? Anyway, so
because you're cute.
I love that page, by the way.
Yeah, this one.
The kiss and him experiencing the first time playing bass and actually how it's just kind of relatable. With their conversation, she does have, and the next morning of them actually like waking up next to each other.
Well, she's already awake because he's lazy.
And it's funny that when you say it's like, if an ex leaves you and you leave on really bad terms, if it's a manipulative person, like, you know, maybe one of the future evil exes, you could still feel like you're being controlled in a way. You've experienced some trauma in your life, some trauma, and it could leave you with some things that leave you broken in certain aspects or avenues. So if you try to experience one thing with somebody and they bring up something, and you know how you kind of go into a very cold state of mind, and shut off that person, it's not that person's fault. It's whatever that ex is doing to you still.
Yeah, I did that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I probably did some with you too.
Maybe.
Maybe.
But I did notice when Scott wakes up at Ramona's place, there on her nightstand is this paper that says Gideon. So she's acting like it's not a big deal, but I think one of the other, Julie, yes, knows Ramona briefly, like they're new friends since she moved here, and had mentioned a Gideon was like her ex or like some guy back in New York. So they're not really sure if Ramona is actually single or not. But Scott's like, well, that's fine. And I'm like, yeah, because you're not single. So, I don't condone cheating. So it's like, all right. And sleeping in someone else's bed, whether or not you have sex, I still think is cheating. So anyways, he ends up leaving, and then that's when it's like, it's starting to get complicated. And that is when Knives starts kissing Scott more when she sees him.
Right.
Because I'm like, I bet she probably feels something, like doesn't even fully recognize it, but she starts like, oh, if I put out more, if I give you more, then maybe you won't pull away as much, because she's probably feeling like he definitely is. And then this is when they're gonna go and do the actual show.
Right.
And that was that was really interesting. Should I just jump right into it?
Yeah, so another really funny character in this book, by the way, while we get into the Rocket, is Stephen Stills. That guy is also in the same realm as Scott, but he is just primarily focused on his future as a band together. Mm-hmm. Everything else in his life, he just looks at it as complications and possibly like things to overcome.
I think without him, this band would not exist.
Right.
Yeah.
And he also has some of the more manic episodes because of what's going on with the band and who they're up against in the battle of the bands and things like that going forward. Which also adds another state of urgency to their story. So
yeah, I do like him. And I think it's funny, Knives does ask Scott, like, do you always say Stephen Stills? And he's like, yeah, his name's Stephen Stills.
The talent.
Yeah. It's like, okay. He always says his full name. But apparently that's how my uncle is. Everyone always calls him by his first and last name. All of his friends do. Yeah. They just always did. So there's this band that goes on before Scott's band. And they do something where they make the entire audience like just incapacitated.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what you want to call it. They're not asleep, but it like totally just wrecks them all. And the only ones that are still coherent are Ramona and Scott's sister, Stacy, because they were both in the bathroom and they were chatting and meeting up and everything. And then they come out and see everyone down. And poor Stacy, there's the guy that she brought that she was dating, is making out with Wallace, Scott's roommate.
Wallace has a character that has +5 in charisma.
Apparently.
And he's just so naturally charismatic and doesn't have to try. He's like one of those kind of cool characters where he just has these conversations and he just has this look and kind of does like the same thing as who is it? Jack Harkness from Harkness, yeah,
yes.
From Doctor Who.
Clay met him for the first time last
He's
night.
like a young version of him. Like if he were to do like this, guy growing
except
up.
Wallace seems to only be gay.
Right, and then Jack is what, pansexual?
Yeah, he's pan.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's just the same kind of element of seduction.
He does have very witty lines that I really like, and then Scott tries to give a comeback, and he's like, "You died, kind of thing." It's
where
just
Kim
awful.
kind of comes across as more jaded, Wallace still seems supportive. And those are the two main differences between those.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So then Scott's band goes up, but before they can really play, the first Evil X comes out.
Scott Pilgrim!
Yes.
The roof just kind of explodes, and this character comes jetting down, and it's so cool. Like, I was reading that for the first time on the airplane to go see my school. And I was like, oh my God. I turn on my MP3 player and I was just listening to some Prodigy or something. It kind of helps me read some of these action scenes. It's so cool.
I will say that was the one thing I felt like the movie had over the book was the focus around music in here.
Yeah.
You do lack that from the book, obviously.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool to get to see with it because there's so much around it that you don't get.
You get to have the fights of the movie, if you haven't seen it, are actually choreographed by Jackie Chan's stunt team. And they're really well choreographed. It's super cool. Michael Cera's getting in on some of those fights. And then even if it's not him, if he's doing these elaborate kicks, those stuntmen are just killing it. Like they're doing 540 spins in the air, and they're really fast paced and fun to watch.
Yeah, I do think that, I guess that would be another thing that I would say that the movie probably has on the book is the fights do go a lot longer in the movie than in the book.
Right.
It's only a couple frames and then they're done. It's real easy for him to defeat them, pretty much. Especially Matthew Patel. He was easy to defeat.
It's a warm up boss. It's supposed to make you feel good and play more of the video game when you play through it.
Yeah, I did like that.
Not to say that Matthew Patel doesn't have some cool moves, though. He does have an ability to summon demon hipster chicks these floating spectral vampire cool rock girls.
Yeah, they are.
Who fly in the air and shoot fireballs at Scott and his band.
When we played, I was him and his demon hipster chicks. So the play was the rest of them.
And I love these two panels too, because the movie is like, it's so good, we're just going to include this stylistically in the movie for the backstory portions. Like, yeah,
I like the backstory portions.
They do that for Matt, they do that for Lucas and Todd.
Well, I haven't gotten to Todd.
Not Todd yet, but...
No. I just see an image of him at the end here.
Right.
Yes. So
what do you think of Matthew? Like he's the first Evil X. He's the one that's going to tell you about pretty much the premise of the books going forward.
I thought it was really funny that he first sends an email to Scott.
It's polite.
It is.
I'm gonna fight you.
Yeah, and he's supposed to be giving the background information. Well, Scott being Scott, and he's an idiot, doesn't actually read it and just goes blah, 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 and throws it or deletes that one.
First pro for Scott, I think I have to mention it since I'm thinking about it right now. Completely accurate to how I would probably read that email. If you get some sort of like email
that is weird.
Or a comment on YouTube like, hey, I'm going to fight you. What would you do? You're just like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay, whatever.
I mean, I would read it all, but...
I think Scott's relatable in that sense. Like,
I guess, maybe for a guy. I don't know.
For me, it's like completely relatable.
But then again, you do comment that I read everything when we go to the museum. I read everything there.
You do?
Yeah. So
and I
would
skim.
Yeah, I would read it all. Okay, but then he also gets a letter in the mail. And so wouldn't you then be like, oh, okay, this person... not only has my email address, now they also have my home address and are sending me this message. Like, I would definitely pay attention.
I'll tell you where. It would be on the counter, and then I would go to the Rock and be like, I think I did see something in the mail.
That's true, because this guy will grab the mail from the mailbox, but then won't open it. And I'm like,
Bill. Ooh. Yeah.
Technically, I can't open it because that's a federal offense, so you have to open your own mail.
So not only is banned, but it looks like Kim and a lot of others are actually more involved in the fight. They see that Scott is outnumbered, and they also step in to help.
Yeah, well, Kim is in the band.
And his first shirt, which is a really popular look for Scott, says Plum Tree. That's a band, and their significance is that they wrote a song called Scott Pilgrim, which Brian Lee O'Malley used for his main character.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense because I didn't understand what that was then.
Yeah.
Because I really like plums. They're my favorite fruit. So I was like, cool. I like plums. Plums come from trees. Sure.
Yeah. Some of their lyrics too have points in the story that you'll hear.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay. So fight. A little schmoozy with Ramona. Then on the bus.
She explains the Evil X thing on the bus.
Yes, she does. That he's going to have to go through all of them. Interesting that she continuously says evil ex-boyfriends.
She could have... Yeah, that's true.
Because in the movie, she just says evil exes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what that means then for later on.
Right.
I was curious about that.
She, that'll be a... If you continue to read these, you like these.
I will finish them, yeah.
We can talk more about certain evil exes and why she says that. But that'll be interesting going forward. She does say ex-boyfriends on the bus.
Yeah. So then we do a flashback to when Scott was in school. It seems like he's in high school, and I guess Kim got kidnapped by this jerk guy, and who beat up everybody in school, Simon Lee.
Yeah.
And Scott has to go through all these guys and beat them all up to get to her.
Right.
And she's fucking chained up. Like, this is some serious shit here going on in high school. I'm like, where were the adults?
Absolutely.
But whatever. So
Scott also refuses to be bullied or be picked on.
So now we know why Kim says he's the best fighter. Because she has seen him firsthand do all of this.
Absolutely.
And go after and save her.
And this clip is also available on YouTube. They use that their voice acting of all those characters to help sell the movie, and they just used those panels, but they animated it.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
That's one of their first uses of animation for Scott Pilgrim. You can still find it on YouTube, and Jason Schwartzman actually voices Simon Lee there.
Oh, okay.
Because there's kind of a weird parallel of Simon Lee to Gideon Graves.
Oh.
They even kind of look similar, don't they?
I don't know, because I haven't read the rest.
Well, you've seen the movie. He's got glasses. He's got the kind of shoulder-length hair.
I saw it once. And the first time I fell asleep, and then you had to play it again for the second.
It made me mad the first time. I was like, this is like one of my favorite movies of all time. It means so much for you to actually watch this with me.
Okay, that is not how I sleep. I look like a princess when I sleep.
You do kind of like throw your hands up and like you're dancing in a club. Sometimes when you're like barely asleep, you're like, I just want to put some movement in there because you're like this. Anyway, continue.
Whatever. So we see this flashback that they actually are a band, and it's Lisa, Scott, and Kim, and then Scott says, I'm moving to Toronto. And then it flashes forward.
That he's moving away?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kim takes that pretty dang hard.
Yeah. So then it comes back to the now times.
Okay.
And Wallace is smart on this. He gives Scott an ultimatum, which I'm like, again, Scott, you were evil for doing this. Wallace is like, look, you gotta tell Knives that it's over, that you can't be dating her anymore. If you're really gonna go after Ramona, like, it's not fair, which is true. It is not, and don't be leading a high school girl on. And Scott's all like, about it. And so Wallace says, if you don't end things with Knives by tonight, I'm going to tell Ramona when I meet her.
That's pretty fair to call someone out if you see something that your friend is doing.
Yeah.
That's that could really hurt somebody.
Yes.
Just be like, okay, well, fine, I'll give you a time limit. Because at least I'm, helping you out, and I'm helping the girl out.
Mm-hmm. Which he does call Knives up, and they end up going to the record store, and she just is talking, and then she's like, Scott, I love you. And he just goes, I don't think we should date anymore. So I'm like, no, that's not how you do that. He's an adult, and she is not.
And Scott has this kind of thing where again, the movie does it really well, where he's just sitting on the bus and flashes of her looking really sad. And then eventually it just turns into Ramona, and then he looks up and he's just straightens his posture. Because he thinks that he did something right. He thinks he did it.
Yeah, he did, but I was, again, the way that he did it. She just said that I love you. I don't think she does. I think this is lust. This is a crush type of thing. But he still needed to have put her down in a better way. Mm-hmm. Not put her down. That doesn't sound good. You know what I mean?
He just gets up.
He's like, let her down in a better way.
Go down. Go down.
Yeah, no. But let her down in a better way and just talk to her, and it's just like, look, like, I do have fun with you. This is really not an appropriate relationship.
No.
You're wanting me to meet your family. That's not going to go over well. Call me in a few years or something. Yeah. Like, if we're both still single then, and we'll see about then. Mm-hmm. And just be nicer about it instead of just shutting it down like that. So, okay. Well, she clearly is not over him and is very upset, which I get.
She's in a very influential part of her life. As being like a 17-year-old, I was still trying to figure out like what music I really liked, what I liked in other people.
Mine was just CCR and REO Speedwagon and
That's fair. I was starting to really branch out for like what my brother liked in music, and like, I can like my own music too, and change depending on who I was dating. So she's in that really fragile part of her life.
Yeah.
So some of it's Scott. I think some of it's also Knives there, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But he should also recognize the fact that she is young, and so therefore she's more impressionable. She's going to be taking things probably a little bit harder than an adult because they haven't been dating for that long.
And willing to throw love out there kind of willy-nilly. Like, I'm feeling a lot of, like, lust and a lot of, butterflies. That must be love.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's not. It's not. I don't believe
Hook,
it was
line,
at all.
sinker.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she takes that pretty hard, and then they have Ramona comes over and Wallace is there, and that's pretty funny. I do like them. And so he kicks him out, and Scott had made food, which I thought was pretty good. He actually seems to enjoy cooking.
Yeah.
And they will sometimes get together, like all of the friends group, and they'll cook together. And there was actually a full recipe in here that Steven Stills was giving as we were going through it, which was kind of fun. I was enjoying that. And it was vegan, which I loved. So I was like, cool, it's vegan.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so do you know what the food was that Scott said he could eat for every single meal? And only eat that?
I think it was garlic bread, right?
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I wrote down the quote because it made me laugh.
Okay.
Scott says to Ramona, "Bread makes you fat?"
Yeah.
She's like, yes.
And a lot of people who've seen that movie know that line and can recite it all the time. But you only seen the movie once and then reading it in the book. Yeah.
Well, to me, it was kind of like a Mean Girl when she says, "Is butter a carb?"
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fine. I'm gonna go get cheese fries. Like, no.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, it's just very like young and naive when it comes to that sort of thing. So
Scott is very attentive when he's on a date with somebody. Like, they're not just like going to go see a movie or something. He wants to, talk. He wants to get to know that person. And the conversations are very different from Knives and Ramona. Knives is more like gossipy, wants to talk about other things that may not matter as much. Whereas Scott, to me, wants to find someone as troubled as he is that can relate to him.
Well, and the conversations with Ramona are more about themselves, whereas Knives and him, they're gossiping about other people. And they don't ever actually talk about themselves. And I do think that has to do with Knives doesn't know who she is. And I think there's a bit of, it sounds like potentially her parents immigrated over. And from having friends that were in the same position, it is more difficult sometimes to then find themselves because they have their culture and what they know with their family, and they're a different person there. Well, then that doesn't quite fit in with, in this case, Canada, or in my case, their U.S. friends or something. So then how, like, what am I like there? What do I like here? And that type of thing. So I think there's some of that playing into it as well, too. And Ramona's just more okay with herself, even though she isn't from Toronto. She's an American. But there is a comment that Ramona makes that then Scott has become obsessed with for at least the rest of this book and potentially longer.
Juicy to tell.
It's his hair.
Yes.
She makes a comment about how long his hair is.
Remember when I said Scott is so relatable to me? I have had this thing happen to me. What you're about to say happened to me in real life. But we don't know how things are going to affect a deeply troubled person. Going on later.
He's obsessed with it to the point where their next show, Steven had gotten a haircut. I'm sorry, Steven Stills. We have to say his full name. Steven Stills. He's the talent, yes. He got a haircut, and Scott's like, "What? You got a haircut?" And he's like, "Yeah, I went out and got a haircut today. I thought it was good before the show." And he's like, "Oh!" And there's an inside of his head version where he's pulling on his hair type of thing. And he's counting the days since his last haircut. And it's oh my gosh, obsessive about it.
It's like a time bomb. He really thinks it's going to affect the relationships in his life.
Yeah.
Like how he looks.
Yeah.
And you've seen my hair back when I did have hair. It was very much...
It was very similar to this.
Yes. And a lot of people wouldn't comment on my hair, but I would feel like they were thinking about it. Because of what some ex-girlfriends would say to me about my hair.
Yeah.
To this day, I still wear hats because I'm very conscious about it and I'm very... self-conscious.
I've told him I prefer him without hair.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, as soon as Ramona says anything, I think your hair's kind of shaggy. He's like, "Oh God, I need a haircut." But does he mention why he's so self-conscious in the book?
Not yet.
They do in the movie. That's interesting.
I don't think so. What do they say? What does he say?
I'll go back to that page real quick and find out.
3 hours before his last haircut was 431 days ago. 3 hours before breaking up with his last girlfriend. Blames breakup largely on haircut. He's been cutting his own hair since then, sometimes.
So what girlfriend do you think that is?
Envy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll find out more and more about her.
Yeah.
But they say the big one, as in like the ex, like, you mean the big one? They're always referring to Envy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get to her because I have met her in this, and there are some comments I have on her. So then it goes to Kim, and oh boy, this girl has a sad life. None of her roommates like her.
No.
And I don't fully get why. I mean, I could get maybe like some of the sarcasm that she has, but I find it to be delightful. So that can be it.
It's a mechanism, as she's hardened.
Yeah, and I mean, they'll be even out in a bar, and one of her roommates is like, "Oh my god, that bitch," and her friend's like, "Who are you talking about?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's my bitch roommate over there," and it's like,
"Oh my god, I forgot about that."
Yeah, and it's like, really? Like, I don't understand then. One, why she lives there? How does she know these girls? Like, I had so many questions, which I hopefully will get into. But I just thought that was an interesting, like, throw-in that they did when they did.
She's interesting. It's like, how do you know when someone's being nice? Or what do you think of a nice person? Someone that smiles, someone that, is kind of easy to talk to. Kim is the polar opposite of that. She's got some negative connotations about her. Yeah. And she doesn't really like, the only way she can express herself is through art and through, drumming and doing things with her, with her friends that allow her that platform.
Not fully by any means, but it did remind me of a friend of ours that I had before we even met, and she would have some trouble connecting with some people, and I worked with her on ways of doing that, and then I figured out it was actually through Merlin. So Merlin was the reason, like, she was able to open up to me, and now we're great from that, and we actually lived together for a while, and I had a great relationship with that, and there are very few friends of mine that I would be willing to live with and put up with, and she was one of the very few. And she does typically have that more sarcastic conversation and tones to her, and she isn't all bubbly and smiley, but she isn't like a downer at the same time. She's just, there's a wall, and I understand why she built that wall, and it took some time, but it was definitely worth it. Yeah. And she had some issues with her roommates in college living with her, and they got mean, and I saw a lot of that in Kim as well too. And it's like, these girls are probably too young to realize how if you just take that time to get to know that person and meet them on their level with their way of conversing, then you could really have a good friend there. Yeah. So I was just like, they're all a bunch of shitheads.
It's just,
who leave their underwear everywhere.
A lot of people, I call them hipsters in this book. There's a lot of hipster crowd of people in this that are quick to dismiss other people and write them off of first impressions alone. Like Ramona, everybody was gossiping around about her instead of just talking to her. There's going to be a lot of that and perceptions of people in this. And that's what you care about when you're at that age. Like, how do people view me? How do people look at me a certain way? Yeah. Yeah. And so then we get into Knives starts to stalk Scott, which, again, seems very teenager-like. Yeah. Like, I'm going to stalk my crush. And it calls the house and is actually outside waiting. And Wallace was nice. I felt like he handled it well. It was just like, Knives, he's not here. I don't know where he is. He's out doing stuff. But, no, you can't come over because Scott isn't here. Yeah. And then opens the door and she's there. And he's like, you need to leave. No. Yeah. Yeah, you can't just wait here. Right. And again, felt like he did a much better job at that than others. Oh, this is what I was talking about. When the lines go around her head, I think that's when something's going on with Gideon. And yes, I've seen the movie, but I'm trying to act like
I hadn't and just let the book take me through. So they do start watching some movies with Lucas Lee, and it does seem like all the other exes are being like hinted at and given little bits of information littered throughout, except Matthew, which is fair because he's the first one. So we're starting to get more drops of him because we know he's coming and he's showing up. I will say, so I did like Chris Evans' portrayal of him, but I like the book's version of him better because he actually seems a bit more relatable and is kind of a nice guy in a way. Like, he doesn't seem real bright. I will give him that.
Lucas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was just like, why don't we take a break? You want to, like, sit down? And like,
Yeah.
he did that before and, like, let Scott, like, have a little bit of a rest during their fight. And then that's when Scott got the bright idea to try to get him to skateboard all the way down those massive amount of stairs.
Yeah. It's like a new soldier meeting like a kind of like a veteran or someone that's seen combat. Is how I kind of read those two sitting down. It's like, why don't you sit down next to me? He's like smoking a cigarette.
He is smoking a cigarette, yeah. He's definitely hardened.
They're having a heart-to-heart to basically go over some of the trials and tribulations of, like Ramona's love life going forward. And at one point he's just like, all right, you ready to do this? He's not going to stop with what he agreed to. And, but yeah, I see that you're going through some of the other cooking things. Brian Lee O'Malley is also, you kind of get a taste of his personality when he's, writing all this. Because he loves cooking.
Yes.
He loves music.
Yes.
And he loves, human relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I get, because I feel like all my D&D characters have they all have little things about me, but there is something specific in each one of them that is from me.
Yeah.
And there's also something within all of them that is connected.
Right.
Yeah. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was the vegan recipe that starts out, and then they splurt it through here, which I thought was kind of cool between the conversations with everybody else.
Yeah.
So I liked that. Yes, so we get to Lucas. That was great. That happened rather quickly. They didn't actually fight for very long. He just pretty much outsmarted him. And then, oh, I forgot. They poof, and they go to the coin things. And I think it was better received within the book, in my mind, than it was within the movie. And that was because I think there were more hints of it being game-like in the book. I think it fell into some of the same traps that anime does when you try to make it live action. So we loved Cowboy Bebop, the anime, but when we saw it in live action, it didn't translate as well. Particularly some characters were just like, they're too out there to actually be a direct representation when you do a live action. And that's how I felt with the movie versus what I've read so far in the books. Is just things were like a little too out there because it looked too realistic everywhere else, and there would just be these like drops of moments when there was like this game thing. Yeah,
I think I really liked the game choices in the movie. I think they were evenly sprinkled around. I love the 8-bit logo. So at the very beginning of the movie that you're going to see the 20th Century Fox, but as the 8-bit logo. And I love when you see Lucas when he comes out of the Winnebago, and it instantly starts playing that theme again because he is movies, he is Hollywood.
Yeah, that's true.
He's a cliche, but he's also a little bit more cartoony in that than he is in the book. But I actually like that conscious decision. He is that kind of over the top, action star. Because the theme is like all these guys are cooler than Scott. All these exes have things in their life. And why would Ramona be with him over all these really cool personalities? Their douchiness aside, and
well, they weren't like this though. At least these two weren't like that when she dated them.
Right, and she explains that more over time.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that, Scott will change his outfits the more that he meets these guys. Like, he'll go with the black and white pattern after meeting Lucas and all this other stuff. And there's a fun thing about Lucas, of who he's based off of, Lucas Lee. In the books, he is a skateboarder turned pretty good actor. That's also based off of Jason Lee. You know, Jason Lee, he's the in Mallrats, and he's the voice of Syndrome. He was a skateboarder. I don't know if you knew that. He's a professional skateboarder turned actor. And his name is Jason Lee, so Lucas Lee.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Pretty fun.
Yeah, well, Scott gets him confused with Luke Wilson, which apparently is another character in here.
Yeah.
And not the other Luke Wilson.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait, is he talking about like the Luke Wilson? No, he's not. He's talking about like this world Luke Wilson. So, okay. Yeah. I did think it was fun. He got an item, and Scott gets so excited, and it's a Mithril skateboard. And I was like, oh, Mithril, it's so cool.
Yep.
And then he's like, no, I can't even use it, though, because I didn't take the skateboarding proficiency back in the 5th grade. So I didn't like that. That was pretty funny. So goes on. This next scene never happened in the movie, which, again, I understand because of timing. But Stacy, Scott's sister, and Ramona do a package delivery over to the library, and Knives shows up there, and she is like badass ninja girl there. After she had dyed part of her hair.
Now this is a look. This is a Knives look. Like, I thought she was pretty cute before. This is actually like warrior Knives. Yeah, she's pretty cool there. And comes down, and they have an awesome battle scene. And people just let it happen.
Yeah.
Like, cops aren't called. No one's really questioned afterwards. They just leave.
If you play Streets of Rage, right? There's all these like turf war gang fighting going on in the streets, and it's just kind of like, well, what'd you expect? It is Wednesday, you know? So this kind of stuff happens.
I just thought maybe it was just because it's Canada. I mean, I've been there a few times.
Does that actually happen in Canada?
Not from my experience, but I told you that I did infiltrate one of the Canadian military bases.
That's true.
I did do
By
that.
pure accident. You just drove through.
I drove in and I just walked right on in.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was, je suis désolé. And then they were like, oh, it's okay.
So you're playing Grand Theft Auto, you see like out of nowhere, like 5-star, you know, wanted level, and then you just kind of like, oh, my bad. And you press the cheat code and you left.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing happened.
And
it
then
was
your
fine.
wanted level
great.
goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, you just smile real big and I just, you know.
So the choice of like having Ramona there present for Lucas in the movie versus Ramona not even being there for the second X is kind of a choice as well.
Yeah, that was interesting that Scott went out and sought him because he knew what was supposed to happen next, and yeah, she wasn't there. She was busy doing her package delivery work. Yeah. And I do like the relationship between him and his sister, Ramona and Scott's sister, Stacy. I like Stacy and Ramona's relationship. It's cool. I liked that, you know, like if you have a sibling and getting kind of like friendly with them, they're whoever they're dating or they're with type of thing. So yeah, I always wanted to have that.
Want a cool fact about Stacy?
What?
Brian Lee O'Malley's sister is actually named Stacy.
Oh, okay.
And the name tag that Stacy, or Anna Kendrick's character, wears in the movie actually belonged to his sister when she worked at a coffee shop.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. That's awesome.
Pretty interesting. Stacy's another one of those underrated characters that she'll show up more and more. But she does also. I did figure that. She's kind of in control of the gossipy cloud over Scott. She likes, you know, talking to people over technology, like cell phones, like texting everybody, rather than just like talking to him. She has no idea what to say to him in person. She does not always say the right thing in person.
She's 19 though.
Yeah.
So she is younger than the majority of them as well too.
Yeah.
So I get that. We're not sure how old Ramona is because it never says.
Right.
At least so far. I did question you last night. I learned what Ramona's middle name is. Do you remember
Yes, I do. It is Victoria.
Yes, it is.
Ramona Victoria Flowers. I think
Yes.
that's a beautiful name.
Yeah. Which Clay could not get. And I was like, come on, Clay, it starts with a V.
I couldn't believe I didn't remember. It's like...
And I was like, it's a V.
Yeah.
I was not getting it.
Oh my
So
gosh.
they made some Queen jokes, which I have heard all in my life as well. So
Okay.
I was like, that's nothing new. Scott gets a phone call. And oh boy, that look when he realizes who it is.
Yeah.
It's Envy, which we find out that they call her NB because her initials are NV and then Adams, so that's how they came up with that.
Yep.
And still don't know what her actual name is, but I guess she's the big one. And she says, like, it's been a long time. And then he's like, a year, I think.
Yeah.
It's just asking how he is. And I hate that. It was such like almost like she knows he's happy. And so she's going to call and fuck with his life. And
She's always in his head.
yes. And I was just like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's such the case where it's like, I just want to call you and just like throw in a little dig that my life is great and just remind you of me. And I have met people like that, and you're just like, fuck off.
That's the point where you can really get inside of Scott's thinking process in his head a little bit because of his decisions and how he's talked to people in the past and why being cool matters. Because you don't know exactly what Envy does yet. Right.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know. And like he is so messed up afterwards where Wallace knows, and so he puts him in his chair, puts a blankie around him, gives him hot chocolate.
He knows exactly what Envy can do.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's awful. I was like, therapy. This is why everyone should be in therapy. That's why we're in therapy.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I'm like, oh shit. And I felt more of that than I did, obviously, in the movie. Again, timing.
Yeah.
It's a timing issue.
I didn't even realize that timing is such a big part of this book. Like when people say certain things, when certain events happen, like the kissing or all that, the timing is always either off or right on time. It's never in between.
No.
So when bad things happen in your life, it's always a timing issue, and it's something that unfairly is, related to the person that you're trying to make happy, or something that you're trying to correct in your life. Something that can always throw you off.
So I did want to ask you about this, and it might be a bit of a spoiler for me for the rest of it, but there is a scene where Ramona and Scott are walking, and they're going to be going to a party together.
Right.
And he starts talking about this restaurant that he always wanted to work at because it was like this nouveau Mexican themed restaurant where everyone dressed up in like cowboy attire, and he like said he worked there, but then something happened and he doesn't remember what happened, but then he was let go because the place burned down and he lost a couple years of his memory. And he says that he's not sure if he even graduated school.
That is interesting. I guess I've forgotten about that storyline.
Yeah, and I'm like, where is that going? Because I don't remember that at all in the movie.
No.
And she's like, what, you don't remember whether or not you graduated? And he's like, no.
Yeah, you're gonna get
What?
you're gonna get more passages of that in time, because that must have been after he met Kim and after he moved.
Yes.
And he does love cooking. There's a thing in the they don't really mention it in the movie that's one of his passions in life. He likes bass, but I think he would also prefer being a cook.
Yeah.
Something that's even explored in Seconds, Brian Lee O'Malley's other book.
Which is very good.
Yeah,
we could cover
very
that
good
as well too.
But yeah, Scott's even wearing a cowboy shirt in that scene you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Someplace, I think he may have been working with Stephen Stills during that time too.
It didn't say yet if it is, but
the way
it
that I'm
didn't say.
remembering it, I think he was working with Stephen Stills, because
Okay.
Stephen Stills also has a cowboy kind of look to him.
He does. He has the belt buckle and
He's got
and
the shirt that's got the designs.
Oh, Tori noticed.
I used to have those shirts all the time when I was going to school.
You should still wear those. I got a thing for cowboys.
Yes.
So then we find out that Scott's they're there to see the band, and it's Envy's band, and we know that Envy is dating a Todd.
Mm-hmm.
And Ramona said, "Oh yeah, I used to date a Todd." Well, of course, Scott being Scott and his idiot doesn't put it together, but it's the same person. So that these two are now dating, and that's Scott's ex, and that's Ramona's ex. So we are introduced to the third evil ex, but then it ends there.
That's one of my favorite designs of a character, because you'll notice that Todd is just like an evil, cooler version of Scott. He even wears a similar ringer shirts, like t-shirt designs. He's got the sweatbands that look better for him because he's also a bass player. And he'll even admit that, Todd's a way better bass player than he is. He's got similar hair, and when he's using his powers, like his hair will go up. We'll get more into that in the future, but he's basically Scott at like power level 20.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how kind of Scott portrays him.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for you to read more of these Scott Pilgrim novels. There's way more lore to get into.
Oh, I'm actually very excited.
Good.
And the more that I think about it and talk about it, the more I am enjoying it. And obviously, I would sleeve this one, and Clay would sleeve this in a heartbeat as well too.
Oh yeah, Scott Pilgrim has been a big, integral part of my life of like imagination, but also just like talking to people. I didn't realize like how much of it was going to be like super relatable to my life. I love the action scenes, and there's time and place for it, but how people have similar baggage to yours, and how you can maybe help each other. And Scott is also, when I read these for the first time, I was Nai's age. I was like, I think she's 17?
Yeah.
So I was 17, 18 when I read these.
Okay.
And they didn't even have the final book out, book number 6. And then the movie was coming out at the same time. I was like, how are these going to end? Are they actually matching up the endings? What's going to happen?
Oh, that's cool. I don't know. Don't tell me.
Yep. So you have no idea how these are going to end.
No, I don't. I have no idea.
So
okay.
Very excited for you to check out more Scott Pilgrim in the future as we're building up to the Netflix animation TV show, which is going to have more music. All the actors are back for their voices, which is really going to be very exciting. And we have Scott Pilgrim board games to show you and teach you how to play. Yeah.
So look forward to those. Make sure that you like and subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming Scott Pilgrim stuff.
And let us know if you want more trivia questions in the comments below, either about the movie or the book, to stump your friends. All right. So thank you so much for watching. Go and hug your closest manic pixie dream girl.
Sure.
Yeah. Grab a nice cup of tea. Put on some good garage bands.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.